welcome to the latest edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Cassidy Jo Fortin. Today we are sitting down with two professors of the African American Studies Department, Gwen Alexis and Trinaine Davis, to discuss Black History Month and the status of racial tensions in society today. Thank you both for being here today. We really appreciate you coming and joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Let's just go ahead and start with discussing, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
I'm very happy to be here just on campus in general. I'm very brand new to campus. This is week 5 for me.
Well, then welcome.
Yes, and I'm very happy to serve as a coordinator for our African American Resource Center on campus. And everything has been amazing thus far, which I plan to make sure my tenure stays that way.
Very nice.
Yes.
And I've been here 4.5 years. I teach in the African American Studies Department. I am the volunteer coordinator for the African American Resource Center. They can't get rid of me. No, they can't.
Why would they want to?
Right.
I don't know, but they can't do it. And because I really care about the students, and I care about all my students, but especially the students who frequent the ARC. So that's
nice.
about me.
All right, and then can you tell us a little more about the African American Resource Center, or you called it the ARC?
It's the ARC. That's the AKA, the
All
ARC.
right.
Right.
Tell us a little about that.
Well, the ARC has been in existence on campus since 2005. This is a place that serves as a home away from home for our students, particularly our African American / Black students on campus. We have everything from just a nice social environment to a area where students can study, computer labs, our own personal library where students can check out books. So we try to make sure we are a small ecosystem that's going to bring about Black excellence for our students.
Nice, very nice.
And the ARC, it was started, as Tremaine said, in 2005 by Dr. Gathaiga. And it was a place that was needed because there wasn't any place on campus like this where you have a home away from home and you could the students could feel at one and at peace. So they got together with ASPA, the African American Faculty and Staff. They got together and with the BSU and the students, and it was a battle. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to open the ARC. It was a battle, and they kept fighting. And the president, they finally said, you know what, this is your place. And as 2005 it opened, and the students been there ever since.
That's great, really great. And then February is Black History Awareness Month, as everyone knows. Why do you think this is something that's important to highlight in our society?
Well, I think anytime that you have a story that is different from the mainstream and oftentimes becomes unsung. So for us to celebrate Black History Month, it's a reminder of those who came before us, who have kind of paved the way that we can be here. The other thing that's so important is that Black history is American history.
Exactly.
We cannot tell the story about America developing without not having Black, whether it's African American or folks who are directly from the diaspora, that's here, that's settled here. We would be remiss if we did not mention those folks. So for one, it's so important to have Black History Month as a kind of a reminder. It's a celebration for everyone because we all benefit from it. There are things that we do every day that we have to thank Black people for. The fact that we have stoplights, you got to thank a Black person for that. We all wear shoes. The shoe machine, the thing that sews on shoes, was invented by a Black person. So there are small things like that to the massive things, to the Frederick Douglass of the world, the W.B. Du Bois of the world, the Fannie Mae Hamers and Sojourner Truths and Harriet Tubmans. So all that is coming apart to make us who we are as American and as we celebrate it.
Very nice. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
And Black History Month, it's not only about a month. It's 1 month out of the year, but it puts a focus and a highlight on the lives that we have lived and that we are part of America. We made America the great country that it is today. Without the Black Americans, African Americans, people from the diaspora, America would not be the great country that it is today. So this Black History Month is a positive way to teach other human beings about our struggles, about our successes, our joys, our tears, and about everything that makes us human beings that we are today.
That's a great way of putting it. Is there anything more, though, that we could do to celebrate this?
Well, absolutely. I think we, as Professor Alexis mentions, yes, Black History Month is in February. And that kind of, is a running joke within itself, being the shortest month of the year.
Yes.
But there's reasons behind that, and hopefully we'll have time to get into that. But again, this is a time to recharge. This is a time to look into something so that for the rest of the year, we can explore that. There's no way that we'll be able to cover everything about Black history, because to do that, we have to go back to civilization, to the start of civilization. But it's a great reminder to let us know that we have so much to learn. But with that, it's because we gave so much to the world. And so that's so important to have as a mindset, as a young person, as an elder, to know that we are a part of this lineage. And yes, it directly comes to those of us who identify as Black or African American, but it also affects those of us who do not identify as well. So it's something that we all can take away from.
Okay. Anything else?
What I love so much, Cassidy, about teaching is the fact that I can reach the students who don't really understand my journey, my people's journey. I don't understand their journey, their people's journey. I can reach out and say, this is what we did to get here. This is what makes us human. And I'm going to use the word human a lot, because that's what we're all, human beings.
Yes.
And this is why we are a success today, because of, as Tremaine said, it started way before we came on the Middle Passage. Africa started a civilization. Some of the greatest libraries, the greatest kings, queens, human beings that ever walked the face of the earth came from Africa. So this is the history that I can say, listen here, students. And I don't know if they listen, but I tried.
Hey.
But it's such a pleasure. And Black History Month, it's a starting point that we can just keep continuing the conversation with.
Very nice. And then to make this a little more personal to you, how has learning about your culture empowered you?
Oh, for so many different levels. I mean, so many heroes and sheroes I've learned about that just helped me have a sense of self, a sense of pride, which then makes me find that in other people. I feel like if I didn't have a sense of who I was, it'd be so difficult for me to see that in other folks. So Black History Month has really done that for me. I mean, from learning about even, people of ancient pharaohs, from Amenhotep, to folks who practiced medicine for the first time ever, to even more recent history with the creator of Black History Month, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, someone who was a first generation removed from enslavement, but took it upon himself to learn how to read and write. People like one of the greatest Americans of all time, Frederick Douglass, who was often considered to be President Abraham Lincoln's right-hand man.
Yes.
Yes. All these things go into play that makes me feel very great. And I come from an athletic background, so sport figures as well, Muhammad Ali, Dr. Tommy Smith, John Carlos. These are people who really stick out to me, and at the time when I was a student athlete, I did my best to emulate.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm 60 years old, so I've seen a lot and I've been through a lot. And let me see, how should I say it? At first, pride was something that I had to learn as a Black woman in America, because I grew up in mostly, African American neighborhoods, a school system. So I was looked at in certain areas as less than. But then once I started learning my history, and my specialization is U.S. history, and that's African American history. Once I started learning my history, I got proud, and I started saying, okay, there's more to me than being a student in an overcrowded classroom. There is more to me than being someone who you don't want to let walk in a door, or you follow me around a store because of the color of my skin. So I realized that a lot of the people who came before me, my ancestors, my great-grandmother was enslaved. Yes, my great-grandmother was enslaved. And these are the people, to survive slavery, that is a lot. And I'm very proud of the fact that they put me here today. And that's why this month and learning our history is so important to me. So very important.
Absolutely.
You both raised some great points. Thank you for sharing. Um, Changing up a little bit, what would you define prejudice as?
Well, I would look into the textbook version of that. I know that it's been displayed. I think anyone who has a bias and use that to negatively affect someone else or without giving that person a chance, I think is how I would define prejudice. And unfortunately, it's a lot of prejudice that goes on. But thank God for months like this, like Black History Month, because it helps take away those layers of that negativity. Because the more you learn about someone, the more we realize, like Dr. Alexis talked about, is that humanization of a person. Sometimes to have a prejudice can also mean that you're dehumanizing someone. You're not giving them the right for them to be validated in a sense. But the more we learn about months like this, the better we are to attack that and get rid of that notion, because all of us have value.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, prejudice is fear.
Yeah.
Prejudice is basically fear. You fear the unknown. You fear what you don't know. You have bias against people you don't know. You don't know that they eat like you, they sleep like you, they wake up like you, they go to school like you, they marry, they love, they cry. So prejudice is fear. And this gives us a chance to reach out. And if you open your mind and your heart, you're going to say, wow, okay, you mean that person's human? Like, you do the same thing you do.
Right. Right. Yep.
What?
Yep.
So
Yep.
prejudice is something that is based on fear.
Right.
That's the way I feel. There's a textbook,
Right.
about bias, but to me, it's fear.
Yeah, and that goes to this why it's so important, because fear comes out of not understanding something or not knowing something. But if you know yourself, then it's very easy for you to see yourself in someone else. So that value piece becomes so important.
Very nice. And then how would you define discrimination? Is it any different from prejudice?
I feel like it's an action. I feel like
Okay.
discrimination is the action of that fear, of the
Okay.
prejudice. And we all have certain biases that we have to be aware of. We all have blind spots. But I think the more that we're focused on those blind spots, the better we can become. I know in my life, and this is a small example, whenever I go out to the park to play basketball, someone who has on low tops or none basketball shoes, I've already said I'm not picking that person because they didn't come prepared, and that's such a crazy bias that I've once upon a time had. But I use that to make an example that just because what that person looks like from the outside does not give us the right to just make an assumption.
Right.
So I feel like that discrimination becomes the action of that prejudice, the action of that fear.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say
No,
to that?
that's
Okay. And then have you ever experienced this, whether in your personal or professional life?
All of the above.
yes, all of the above. Check,
Right.
check. All the boxes.
We do. And I think nowadays, most of the time, that prejudice or the discrimination is done such on a micro level. There are a lot of microaggressions that we experience, from day to day. I think with me just being in the physique that I am in, I'm 6'8", tall Black guy. So there's the assumption that, I have something to do with athletics. So there are times where someone will come to me and ask me about the schedule of the basketball team, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I work on the side of student affairs or things of that nature. But on a more serious note, just being in this forum can sometimes be a threat to certain people. And I think that becomes where the fear becomes very, very true, very real. So I think the more that we're able to have conversations like this, the more that we take the time to get to know a side of someone that we're not used to seeing, the better off we will become. But unfortunately, we live in a reality where that is very real.
Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to talk about?
Yes, I check all of the boxes, and being a African American woman, I've gone into stores, and I have been the only person of color, and I've been followed. And this is in California, and and in New York. I'm from New York, and it's happened to me numerous times, and I'm like, check the box. There you go.
Yeah. In a former life, I used to work in retail.
Okay.
There was a time where I went to the store that I worked on an off day to pick up a pay stub, and was followed around in the store that I worked at. But I was, it was an off day, So I was not in the traditional, formal attire. I was more in my leisure clothes, and so, I was followed around the store. So these kinds of things happen. These are just small examples. You asked about does it come into work in a professional environment? Yes, it does. There are colleagues who will look at you as less. There have been times where it was I must have been a part of some kind of form of affirmative action to have my seat at the table. So in other words, I didn't make it where I'm at on my own merit. Someone had to give me a handout to get to where I'm at. And so those kind of things happen from time to time. But it becomes so important for us to be grounded in this knowledge of what we learned from Black history to be able to approach it. Because there are times where you can handle it by trying to fight fire with fire, which only creates more of a bigger fire. I like to have the approach of making sure that I have something that's going to cool out that fire. So with that, it's the knowledge of self. So as long as I'm content with knowing about me and who I am, it's very easy for me to kind of diffuse that situation when I have the energy to do it.
Right.
Because we can't go around, fighting all these battles all the time. We completely run out of energy. Yeah, so that becomes, self-care becomes very important too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you both opening up in this sense. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. How would you define that?
I think Black Lives Matter movement is speaking to the generation where we're at right now.
Okay.
I think oftentimes we look back on the past to look at certain things, whether it was in the civil rights movement, if it was in the Black liberation movement that came along with folks like Stokely Carmichael or the Black Panther Party, the US movement. There are different examples of times where a generation has to come together to have a voice. And so I feel like with Black Lives Matter, we definitely have created a voice within this movement because it's so important to understand that. And on certain aspects, it's very unfortunate that this is the chant. This is what we're saying. We have to say that in 2017. But also with that, we have to be reminded that we're not that far away removed from Jim Crow. So if we look at it from a time scale, we still have a long ways to go. But I think the Black Lives Matter movement is helping us get to where we need to go.
Okay.
And it is a voice. Every generation, there's a voice. And this is this generation's voice. This is what they need to say. This is how you say, listen to me. I'm human. See me. I hurt. I bleed. I do everything that you do. This is the voice that we have. And I'm very close to Jim Crow because I grew up in a time when going to the South, I was scared to death to risk my life to drive certain restaurants when we went down south. In the 60s, early 60s, when we would drive, I couldn't eat in the restaurants. And I would have to send my mother in because she was a fair skin and they didn't know if she was white or was she black. And she would have to go in and get food for us. So I'm really close. I've been in Jim Crow. And every generation, unfortunately, they need that movement. They need a voice. And this is Black Lives Matter. This is it now.
That's a great way of putting it. Thank you. So it has really strong relevance in today's society. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
The relevance?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think all of the lessons from the past still are here with us today. Again, going back to the creator of Black History Month, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, in 1933, he produced a book called The Miseducation of the Negro.
Okay.
And in this book, there's a paragraph that starts off by saying, when you control a man's thinking, you don't have to worry about his actions. And so that still, from 1933, still plays a big role in 2017. So it's still very relevant because, again, if we look at it from a timeline scale of looking into the generations, we're not that far removed. We have made tremendous progress. And I think we all should be proud of the progress that we have made, but we should not settle on that because we know we still have a very long way to go.
Right. And we have to be mindful that we have a long way to go, and we have to take people along with us.
Yes.
We have to show them this is the way you need to go. We have to say, we hear you. We're there for you. If you need us, don't be afraid. Come to us. We'll teach you. This is where we're at now in 2017. And as as I get into the elder more and more, I feel that I'm here to say, what do you fear?
Nice. All right, and then in today's society, I feel like we hear a lot about diversity. We need more diversity. We're lacking diversity. I completely agree. We should have more diversity. Why don't we have it? Because in my opinion, it should be something that we could easily have. It's just not happening. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think you have a struggle between what was once and what is happening now. Unfortunately, what was once still has a lot of power and resources.
Okay.
And so what is happening now is trying to work to get that. So I think that's where that issue comes into play at. But we also have to make sure that we are doing a great job of defining diversity.
Right.
Some of them may say, well, we're in a space together. So that's diversity.
Okay.
Are we working together in the space is how I would define diversity. And I see more of that happening. And that's phenomenal. That's a great thing. So the encouragement still needs to happen so that we can continue.
Okay.
Because we know it's a difference between being in a room and then having a seat at the table. And everyone deserves a seat at the table. So I think we're working more towards that. But again, I'm a glass is half full kind of guy. So, I feel that the strides that we have made towards diversity, we can continue to build on it.
Very nice.
And what I teach my students about diversity, learning about each other.
Right.
What do you know about the person who's sitting next to you? What is their struggle? Diversity, you have a bunch of people in the room and say, oh, we're all diverse here. But if we walk out of that room and we don't know what is your background and you don't know what mine is, and we're going right back to where we were before.
Right, exactly.
So we're not diverse at all. We're just going back to wherever you live, live, I live, and we close the door, and boop, I'm okay.
Right.
So diversity it's a word, it's thrown around, but you have to learn about each other, and once you learn, you'll know you're more alike than you thought.
That's right.
It's working together. It's
It's
getting
working
to know each other.
Getting to know.
Like you guys said again, realizing we're all human.
That's right.
Realizing.
That's
It's
right.
really, that's the word now. I hear diversity more in the last few years than I've ever heard it. And, but you can say it, but you have to make sure you do something about it, which is teaching.
Right. And it's, what's interesting about the term diversity is that it's often followed with tolerance. And I feel like that's the wrong way to go.
Okay.
Personally, when I think about things that I tolerate mosquitoes out in the springtime and the summertime, for a small portion of time. If I'm flying somewhere and I forgot my headphones, I can tolerate a crying baby for my duration of that flight, because I know eventually I'm going to be in a space where I don't have to hear this crying baby anymore. So we have to be very careful in what words we use to define diversity. Same thing with equality as well. Equality is something that we all are seeking for, but if we don't have equity and equality, then we can't necessarily have equality.
Right.
And that goes back to, diversity as well, because it's so important for us to be in those spaces to where we learn from each other and not just tolerate that space that we're in for this hour and a half, and then we're going to go back to, the status quo. So the cliche term of being comfortable with being uncomfortable comes into play a lot. Yeah.
Very nice.
And it's painful.
Yeah.
When you're getting to know each other, it can be very painful. And when you really go, you're not just putting diversity, boop, it's right on the table. when you knock that off the table and you go in there, it is very painful once we learn about each other.
Yeah.
And that's the difference to me.
Yeah. Truth. We have to deal with the truth. And there are a lot of things about the truth that's not pretty. But if we're coming from a standpoint where we're trying to heal, then we can get there. But we have to be equipped with that. Yeah.
And then are there any areas in society where we could really benefit from seeing more diversity, where maybe okay, we see it here, it will go out to other places, or how do you think it would work?
I think every area in
Yes,
society.
right. Ideally.
Right. I would have to have a broad brush and just say every area. I think there are certain areas where we're starting to see it a little bit more, and we need to support that. I think about entertainment. I think about the shows that we're starting to see that's on mainstream television now. I think that's a very important place to start. Some people will say sports. And I will argue with that. Well, there's a massive difference between those who play and those who own. So
Massive difference.
so I think
Rich
that's
versus poor. We're getting into another area.
yeah, exactly. So there are ways in which we can improve on that to continue to move forward. But in every aspect, in education, we're talking about Black History Month. This is fantastic. Will we get to a point where we can talk about Black History Month not in February? I hope
Right.
so.
Yeah.
That's the goal. Is there a time for us to stand in solidarity with other months as well? Because following Black History Month is Women's History Month. So can we still keep this going and move forward and stand in solidarity to know that all of us matter and we all have a place to shine? So let's help each other do that. I think if we're charged with that, then things can start changing, and we can be very proud of diversity moving forward.
Very nice. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
No.
Is there anything at all that you guys would like to add? You said something earlier about Black History Month being in February, and there is a reason for that. What was that reason?
Yes. So I mean, you hear a lot of things depending on what communities you're in. You're in a barbershop, a nail shop, whatever. You hear people say, "Well, they gave us February because it's the shortest month." See, right? And that's been going on forever. But there is a real intent as to why Black History Month is in the month of February, and that was designed by the creator, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, to honor Frederick Douglass and also President Abraham Lincoln, because it is said that Frederick Douglass celebrated his birthday in the month of February.
He didn't know when he was born, but they said he celebrated it.
Okay.
Right, and that's very significant because Frederick Douglass was born into enslavement. So people who were enslaved, we didn't keep track of birth certificates, right? So it's something that's very powerful within that. And so we have to be mindful of that as to why we celebrate Black History Month in February, because it's paying tribute to ancestors, both in Frederick Douglass and also with President Lincoln, and to now Carter G. Woodson because he's no longer here with us. So we have to keep that true and understand that. So it's by design for a positive reason as to why Black History Month is in February. No one ever gave anyone anything, so for folks to say, well, they gave it to us, well, not exactly, so there was a lot of blood, sweat, tears that come with everything.
Very nice. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add today or speak a little bit more about?
I would just strongly encourage everyone, if you haven't had a chance, to come by and visit our areas where we talk about this. Come to the ARC. We have these discussions all the time. We would love to have folks come by. If you haven't taken a class in African American studies, please do. Same thing with gender studies and women's studies, queer studies. All these things are so important because we live amongst each other. So it becomes important for us to understand the struggles of everyone.
Where can they find the ARC, or how could they reach the ARC?
We're located on the second floor of Humanities, room 222. We're definitely, you can find us on our website as well as Fullerton website. Just type in the ARC, or you can type in African American Resource Center, and you'll find us there.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to teach different human beings. And like I said, it's painful sometimes. Class can get very intense because when you peel away the layers of fear, sometimes all that's left there is just sadness, tears, happiness. So I am very grateful that I'm on campus and I have this opportunity to teach different human beings about each other. And like Tremaine said, we have a lot of centers. We have the ARC, the APARC, the Chicano Resource Center. Come by, visit, sit down, hear the conversations. And that's the only way we're going to learn about each other, is to just dive right in. And I welcome everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll be there too.
Very nice.
Get rid of me.
And you've been touching on this, but I just want to ask specifically, what's your goal as a professor teaching these classes? Do you get a wide range of students in those classes?
Oh, yes. I have this semester I have a lot of athletes. I have a wide range, different students, because I teach, it's cross-listed with ASAM, Asian Pacific Islander, African American Studies, Chicano Resource. So I get a wide range, and I love it because I teach the immigrant. It's really the ethnic, a survey of the ethnic minorities, but I call it AKA, the immigrant family in America, which is everybody except for the Native Americans. So we peel the layers back, and it gets very intense. And then we can just say, okay, sometime I have to say cut. We got to just take it easy. But I think in the end, people become friends that never knew each other before, and it's not kumbaya.
Right.
Sometimes people go out of there and they just mad.
Right.
But it is. I'm so honored to be able to do it, and I'm so happy to be at Cal State Fullerton in the African American Studies Department. I can't tell you, it really has made my fourth act wonderful.
Very nice. Well, you guys have shared some great stuff with us today. I just want to thank you again for being here. That's all the time we have for today. Again, thank you for both being here. You
Thanks
said
for
some
having
great
us.
stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Until next time, I'm your host, Cassidy Jo Fortin with In Focus.